and we are here with Colin of Colin's Corner fame. Colin,
Yes,
before we start, you just got married 2 or 3 weeks ago, correct?
kind of correct. Legally, we got married November 11th last year, and then spent the time after that kind of just planning a friends and family celebration. So,
Okay.
yes, but also no.
Okay. Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And if
I,
Ro
I would
has any
usually make a
advice,
snide remark here, but as it's so close to the day, I won't. Congratulations, that's awesome.
I appreciate it.
so Colin, the first two questions are: what is your book and what is your beverage?
All right, so my beverage on this fine Sunday fall afternoon is just a cup of coffee
Okay,
in my
caffeine is
favorite mug. Do you guys have like a favorite mug that it makes no sense why it's your favorite mug, really, but it just is?
No, man, that's
Like
just
you just, that's it.
I just have a Tervis cup.
I just love this mug. It's just like for some reason it works. And then my book is 11/22/63 by Stephen King.
Interesting.
And,
phone book. That's huge. How many pages is that?
it's well, in classic King fashion, it's about 900, 800 some, I believe.
Oof.
And this is going to jump ahead to questions I have. But as a booktuber, you obviously read a lot of books. How fast can you read a book like that?
It depends. So I am not. Hey, Kevin. I am not really a fast reader. Like I have this family friend of mine that was always tested highly in like reading and retention. And I remember she came on vacation with us one year, and she brought this book down to the beach with us in the morning. And I like checked back in with her around 2 or 3, and she was, I don't know, like 300 some pages into the book. And I was like, "Did you read all of that down here?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "How do you retain that?" And she's like, "I don't know." But I just always tell people I don't do much other than work, do school, and read. So I just read a lot, I guess. And one thing that does help me kind of chip away at things, and I guess this may be a point of contention for some people, is that if there's an audiobook available, I utilize it, especially for longer books, because I deliver pizzas for my work right now. So I have a lot of time in the car. And another aspect of that question is it also depends how invested in the book I am.
Yeah.
So I will lose a lot of sleep over books, staying up way too late to read them.
So you just got married. You're going to school to teach. You have a daughter?
Stepdaughter, yes, but yes.
And you still have time to do a booktuber YouTube channel that you've been doing since what, January of this year?
Correct, yes.
What do you do with the other 3 minutes of the day?
Wonder how there's time to get anything done.
Yeah, that's a lot. You've has as the channel has kind of progressed, right? Like I noticed your logo. I mean, you've got a logo, and you've changed the intro a little bit, and you don't wear a ball cap anymore. And now you're putting out. I don't know if you're putting out like the dad jokes just to bother the daughter or what. But if she's not bothered by it now, she will be in about 5 years. How has that kind of changed? That your progression from January to now, are you spending more time with it or less time with it? You kind of as you figure out what's working for you and your audience.
That's a good question, and I think you guys may be able to attest to this to an extent. But I feel like a lot of advice that people that existed already on BookTube gave me was to just, if you want to do it, just do it. Your charisma, your personality, and that aspect of it will carry you in the beginning, and you will figure everything else out as you go if you want to continue with this. And I was a lurker, not necessarily in the fact that I didn't comment on people's stuff, but I was very active in people's comment sections and had joined people's Discord. But I was not a content creator in the BookTube community until about 4 years into my usage of BookTube. And I always kind of thought in the back of my mind, like, I could talk about books. Like I feel like I could do this. I enjoy talking. Talking in front of people is something that's never really bothered me. And this is a little different because talking in front of a camera by yourself when you're filming videos is a little bit of a strange barrier to get over in the beginning. But I just kind of dove in one day. I went to Walmart. I picked up a little $20 like phone stand clip, and I set up my phone and I recorded my little 3-minute intro video and didn't edit anything, didn't have a mic yet. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to toss this out there and see what happens. And so as that was the beginning, you know, I kind of, it's a lot of different honing of smaller crafts to get the bigger picture. And, you know, editing is something that I guess, Ro, you have some experience in. I do very bare bones. Like I have a iMovie on my MacBook Air, and I don't pay for any type of editing software. Like I have looked up a couple YouTube videos, and I just kind of do a little bit to make it look better. And I outsourced on Fiverr to paid somebody a little bit of money to do my intro because I had an idea for it, but had no technical abilities to create something like that. So Fiverr was awesome, and the guy that I worked with was super helpful and really communicative, and that was a great experience. But other than that, it's kind of just been a matter of streamlining kind of how I do everything, and that saves a lot of time. Editing a video takes time, so uploading a video from my camera takes time. So I'll upload a video, and while it's uploading to my computer, I'll go and do homework or help my daughter with something. And then when it's uploaded, I'll go and edit it for a little while and then export it. And that takes some time. So I'll go and do something else. So it's kind of been a little bit of figuring it out as I go, you know?
When do you expect to graduate?
It's going to probably be about 3 years because I'm in school part-time and I'm also working. And then I'll have to do student teaching before I actually become a teacher. But it's going to be about 3 years, I believe.
What grade are you going to teach, or do you want to teach, or do you know?
Elementary. So I don't know that I'm going to have an exact choice.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy. My daughter is now in 3rd grade. She's getting into the more serious. You know, she's got homework. She's learning some concepts in math that, you know, my wife and I have had to refresh ourselves in. And things have changed, of course, but I really enjoy the beginnings of kids learning to read. And so like kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade, I think is a lot of fun because every kid to an extent is just so excited about learning still.
Yeah.
At that age, there's hardly any, I feel that in my experience so far have been like soured by, you know, the idea of homework and feel burdened by it yet. Everything's just so new and shiny to them that I feel like,
Right.
you know, if you can get them interested in stuff at that age, it's really impactful.
So I'm going to ask this, and I probably pretty much know the answer. You still read to her at night?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so what are your favorite children's books? Because there's always going to be a few that you like, as opposed to maybe what she likes. But if you're reading her Calvin and Hobbes, that's a parenting win right there.
That I haven't read yet, but we are going to. I would honestly even I might just start leaving them in her room.
Yeah.
And hoping that she picks them up. Because those are fun to read by yourself and really escape mentally into. But some of our favorites were definitely Junie B. Jones. I think we have read almost every Junie B. Jones book about 5 times. And those are at a level where she actually will pick them up and read them by herself. One of the interesting things I've noticed that I feel like adults kind of forget is how mentally taxing reading is when you're just beginning to read internally. It's a chore for her to read and comprehend all these things as she's trying to put all these new processes together. So she's starting to read some of those books by herself, but I think our favorite so far that we've read as a family was the series of Unfortunate Events books by Lemony Snicket. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
Oh, yeah.
But those were a favorite of my middle grade years, I would say. And she loved them. We my wife and I would take turns reading them. If I was working, my wife would read them, and I downloaded it on our library app while we were on vacation because we forgot the book and she wanted me to read to her while we were on vacation. So we loved those. That was a really fun journey.
Yeah, in one of your first episodes, and if you haven't watched Colin's Corner, go back to the first couple episodes and start watching it from the beginning, at least those first two, because you laid out that like you had like 6 books that were very highly influential for you. Calvin and Hobbes, one of them, and I knew that we would get along once you said that. So that, and the fact that it was first, great. But you also had The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and there was like the Harry Potter books and all that. So
yeah,
we're tracking, right? I mean, I'm not a big Stephen King guy, but that's neither here nor there. So what influences you now? But now that you started reading more, you're starting to read more indie authors, and you just did Indie Author September, right?
Yeah, yep. Self-pub September.
Is that the first time you've done that?
It's not the first self-pub I've read, but it's the first time on the channel that I've kind of showcased some authors that are known as self-pub authors, because as Mike's books have given me the experience that they've given me, and some other self-pub authors, indie authors that I've tried, have given me such great experiences. I not only wanted to showcase and kind of change maybe the somewhat negative at times stigma that self-published may get, which I think is definitely changing in recent years. But I think that, and this is not an original idea from Colin, but what I've found with self-pub and indie published books is that they are not beholden to anything that a major publisher may shoot down. And so I've had some very unique total experiences, some very unique twists and turns that I don't think traditional published books would be allowed to take, because the author is able to have control over what they're releasing, because it's them. Like, yeah, maybe they have an editor that would say something, about this not aligning with something you said in the past or whatever, but for the most part, there's no big brother kind of shooting ideas down that you might want to do. So
the nice thing too with I'm sorry, Mike, I'll let you get a word in here, man. The nice thing too with self-publishing is if readers do actually say something like, hey, you called this a stonka when it should have been a wonka or whatever, we can go fix it, right? And we can just update it so the next person doesn't have to deal with that. And I think, to touch on one other thing, you said that there's a lot of stigma that's lessening, and I think a part of that lessening has to do with folks like you who are putting together these book review channels and the whole kind of booktuber community, and accepting independently authored books as books, right? Without a whole lot of distinction between them. And there's a lot of good, art being produced with the written word out there.
I agree wholeheartedly, yeah.
So I just want to add a couple things. One, editors. Oh, can't stand them. Yeah.
They're bastards, every one of them.
And second, Colin, I have to tell you, you do not even know. I felt like I weighed 13 pounds when I saw your August, I pulled it up, your August wrap up, where you put Erickson, Hobb, and Molman. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing on that list?
Had he had an editor, they would have caught that typo, Mike.
Hey, I mean, I hopefully I've heard a lot more people talking about your series, Mike. So hopefully sales have bumped up over the last, 5 or 6 months. Not because of me. I'm not saying that I'm the reason for that. I've just heard a lot more people talking about your books.
Well, I will say that Spiffbo is absolutely the best thing I've ever done. And I mean, my sales have jumped up a level, and they've pretty much stayed there since, even though I was eliminated long, long ago. Yeah, it just raised profile everything. So, yeah, if you have a novel to put in the Spiffbo row, you should definitely do it.
If you don't mind the interviewee becoming the interviewer for just a second here, what was your experience like in Spiffbo? I mean, like, just general overview, like start to finish. Was it fun? Was it stressful? Was it awesome? Like all of that? I don't know.
So it started out. I'm like, what is this Spiffbo? And I'm like, you know what? The idea that you're going to take 300 books and pick the best one according to who? I mean, the premise is stupid because reading is subjective. So I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm anti, contest. Never going to do it. And then, like you, I
You're
learned.
never going to be in it again now.
So, like you, I kind of lurk on Discord and watch YouTube, and people kept talking about it, and like, you need to do it. And I actually, when Thiago Abdella and Andrew Meredith were on something, I actually got up the nerve to type, "Is there any downside to Spiffbo?" And they both read it like, "No, there is no downside to Spiffbo." I was like, "Okay, then I guess I should do it." So I did that, not knowing what to expect. You're dreaming, my book will win. I never really thought that. And then when my group came out in Fantasy Faction, I mean, Tori from Tori Talks is in there. Katie Andrews is in there. I always get his name wrong. Sadir S. Samir, the crew. That's in. I mean, I was like, yeah. Yep, I know that book. Yep, know that book. And so when it started, I went on to Amazon because you can read like the first chapter of everyone's book. I read like 10. I'm like, okay. Objectively, I think mine is better than 4 of these. But that means there's 6 that are better than mine, and that's only 10 that I looked at. So I was like, I'm not going to win. That's fine. So it's just talking to other authors. I never did an interview. I was scared to death of my first interview I did with Catherine D. Graham, and she's the nicest, most wonderful person in the world. Set you at ease in a minute. To now, I'm hosting videos. And this was back in May when I signed up, and now, Roe dragged me into the whole Bald&Balding thing.
Drag is a little excessive. You were there.
Well, I am a big guy, so I don't think you could lift me. But yeah, it has been, once I realized that it's all about exposure, and winning is not, I mean, you win a selfie stick if you win. So yeah, it's not about winning, it's about exposure. And once I did that, and I was like, okay, I need to actually do this social media stuff. And so I was on more giveaways and on talking to more people and whatnot. You have to do it. Oh my goodness. It raises your profile. You get to talk to other authors. I'd never had a Twitter account until May when everyone was like, oh my God, Twitter is a light with Spiffbo talk. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll get a Twitter account. So, and now I have over 1,100 followers, I think.
Wow.
So,
that's awesome.
So, I mean, yeah, it took off, and it forced me to do other things. So if my writing is slower, I have an excuse. Although I have plenty of time to write, I just don't. So that's not really an excuse. But yeah, I highly recommend it. Don't go in thinking you're going to win. Go in thinking you're going to make friends that you can talk to forever. I mean, I started giving my book away to anyone on Discord who would want it. You get a book. You get a book. I'll send it to you. Give me your, happy to do that still. If anybody's watching this and you want it, if you're a content creator, I will happily send you my books.
I've always kind of wondered, is that because a ton of self-published authors are doing that, and obviously you guys have invested money to get these books made. So do you ever is there a cost-benefit analysis type thing? Like, I'm giving away these books that I paid money to have made, but I'm getting the exposure. Like, is there really any way to tell if the actual giving away of a plethora of books is boosting sales, or do you just know that boosting sales is working, so you're just continuing to do that? I mean, it is advertisement in a way.
Yeah. So the old adage I learned way back when was, they say 90% of advertising is wasted money. You just don't know which 90% that is. So, I mean, you got to spend some money. For me, last year, I spent a fair amount of money on Amazon ads, and Jeff Bezos thanked me. And I saw nothing. So I said, you know what, this year I'm not going to throw my money away at Amazon. I'm going to give it to whoever wants my book. I sent books to Spain. I've sent books to Australia, Canada. Apparently there's several booktubers in Canada who all wanted my book. Happy to send them. I've sent some to India even. So, I don't care. I will send them because this is my advertising, good, bad, and different. Tell people what you think and let the chips land where they lie.
That's really
So
cool.
like I said, this whole year I've tried to up my profile, and Spiffbo has really been once that happened, I was like, okay, I need to be doing these other things. And I keep thinking of other things I need to do. And then I'm like, but I need to go to my day job. So,
Oof.
So how about you, Colin? Do you get a lot of like unsolicited email of books just coming to you now?
Not a ton. Like, it's a manageable amount. Every week or so, I might get an author or two that reaches out, and I kind of had to start setting an expectation because, yes, I do TBRs. I'm not like Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, where I'm forecasting 13 to 16 months in advance or whatever he does that works for him. I do not understand. I love Mike. Mike is one of the first people that I found in the BookTube community. I do not, for the life of me, Road, just to call back to what you asked me earlier, do not understand for the life of me how this man works a full-time job, raises kids, gets 4 videos out per week, reads books, watches movies, plays video games, talks about sports. How, and he doesn't do audiobooks.
There's just like no sleeping there. That's I mean, 4 videos a week. Even if it's only a 15-minute video, you're still looking at 2 or 3 hours at bare minimum. Not to mention the prep time.
It impresses me, and he famously doesn't script anything and tries to not even edit very much. So I'm sure that saves some time, but yeah. So I did have, I think, once my channel kind of crossed like 100 subs and people were watching, I think I had read Philip Chase's books, and did a review on those. And I think some authors maybe just assumed that, I'd be open to trying some self-published books. And you can't read everything that everyone wants to send you. And you also can't do that and also read what you want to read. Not saying that I don't want to read them, but I found reading again a little later, like into early adulthood, but there was like 15 years of my life where I just wasn't reading, and definitely not the fantasy genre and horror and sci-fi and the kind of things that I've eventually gravitated towards. But there's still some big poppies that I want to get to, just staples of the genre that I feel like I've been missing out on. So it's tough to say no, or it's tough because I know how hard, not for doing it, but I know how hard people like Mike and any self-published author like you guys work on these books and love them and want people to experience them, and I want to help promote that. But also, I can't do everything. So there has been a kind of learning experience of drawing a line like, hey, look, you can send me this. I cannot make a promise as to when I will get to it. But if I do, I will definitely do a dedicated review or talk about it in my wrap-ups and TBR videos and stuff like that, like I did with Mike's books. And, because you don't want to just shoot people down and be like, nah, I can't do that.
I think a fair question here at this point is not a statement, then a question. Not every book is good, right? So what happens when you get one and you're like 2 chapters in and you're just like, yeah, this just isn't for me? As a booktuber, do you just send the person back a letter? I mean, assuming they're an indie or they sent you the book, you just send them back a message saying, yeah, I'm not going to review this on my channel because you wouldn't like what I have to say? Or do you just kind of politely ignore it and move on to the next one?
That's a great question. And it's kind of something that I, in a sense, after I realized that could become a problem, luckily, knock on wood, it hasn't been a problem where I've just like read a book that I felt like was not a polished product. There's obviously, I think there's a distinct differential that needs to be made between like a book not being for me and a book not being ready to be given out to people. Because I think that for some people, self-published books that I've read so far have felt very polished. Most of them have felt extremely polished. Sure, maybe there's a typo here and there, but there's typos in traditionally published books as well. Maybe a little bit fewer and farther between, but some people, I think, you know, if they see that stuff, they think that the story is also maybe not quite up to par. And there's a way that my mind, I guess I'm able to compartmentalize, like, just a typo doesn't mean that this dude's story is going to have a typo. Like, it's still their story. But I think I kind of tried to future-proof myself by not accepting review copies, like a copy in exchange for a review,
Right. Okay.
live on the channel. If people want to send me their books and hope that I read them and talk about them, I'm kind of, you know, I'm more okay with that. But there were a few that I did accept under that stipulation, and I told them, I was like, if I enjoy it, I will review it or talk about it in a wrap up on the channel. And if it didn't work for me, then I will write a Goodreads review. That way, you're still getting some exposure, but self-published and indie published books are a little bit of a different beast, because I'm not saying that, you know, my channel is massive by any means, but I feel like any negative or any positive talk will influence a sale, or could influence a sale. And I don't want to be the reason that somebody doesn't try this indie published author's book just because it wasn't for me.
Right.
So, Colin, Nico had, I don't know if you saw it, Nico had a review out 2 days ago maybe, and it was a book that he didn't like. He's like, but I'm going to do a review on it because I can be constructive and I can say who it would be for. It, you know, was definitely a miss for me, and one of my all-time favorite videos of the year. I mean, he just, you know, laid it out there. This worked, this did not. You know, you may like this if this. I mean, if you haven't seen it, I mean, that's a masterclass in how to do it. He said in his reading wrap-up, he said, I didn't like this book, but I'm going to do a review on it, you know, and then you should watch it. It's like 8 minutes long, and I trust whatever Nico says. I mean,
I love Nico.
Yeah, he can get into it and tear it apart in, you know, a good way, and, you know, this is the strengths, the weaknesses, and just, oh my God, I love his analysis. I was so nervous when I sent my book to him, going, what is he going to say? And I didn't tell him that until after he gave a review. I was like, oh, you don't know what power you had over me. I was not going to tell you that, but whew. So, yeah, highly recommend.
I will check that out for sure.
Yeah, it's just a day or two ago. So,
okay, yeah, I missed that one.
So, Mike, what book did you bring with you?
So I've been reading old favorites from the 80s and 90s. So I have the first Book of Swords.
Oh man, yeah, I remember that. Great book.
I have a severe love-hate relationship with this series. The premise is one of the best premises I've ever had for, like, setting up a story. And then the guy wrote 3 250-page books about it. And I'm like, no! There's so much more you could have done with this. Oh, I'm so disappointed. But, I mean, the premise is the gods come and they make 12 swords. They all have different unique powers. And then they scatter them among the humans so that, you know, people have, the, like, Town Saver. If there's innocents being attacked, it'll go into crazy mode and kill everyone around as long as there's anyone attacking. And it doesn't care about the person. You're probably dead afterwards because it doesn't protect you. It just takes over and kills all the invaders. And there's 12 of these swords. They're all unique. The gods are in there playing a game to see, betting on which human will get them all. And then, you know, things start happening the gods don't like, and they try to take the swords back and can't. And, I mean, you could have written, like, Malazan-length books. You know, the whole series of Malazan could have, and he wrote, like, 750 pages in 3 books. But... I mean, I go back, and my brother, who's big into D&D, he's like, oh, yeah, we took this. We played a whole D&D campaign based on these swords. And I'm like, that sounds so awesome. I didn't know you could do anything right, but you did. You know. So yeah, that love hate with that one. Love the premise. The writing's great, but it's just there's not enough. So that's my book.
It's a good problem to have with a book, though.
Yeah. Well, he's passed away now, so that's it. He did a follow-up series which wasn't as good, but
At least he left you that. But I mean, it's better than reading a book that's 1,000 pages and it's only interesting for the first 100 or so.
I had a book I read when I went traveling. I had to go to Germany, so I was reading at the airport, and it was a thriller. And I landed back in Richmond Airport here in Virginia, and I had like 30 pages to go, the big reveal. And I'm like, I do not even care. And I just threw the book away and walked to my car. Never saw the end of it. It was only to pass the time, and I had zero interest in anything. I was like, I'm not even going to see what the reveal is. I don't care. So yeah, I've had that.
As a reviewer now, Colin, did you find that you had to get to a place where you could just say, right, I'm not going to finish it? I've always been the type of person that if I started a book, I generally was going to finish it, and I've only recently got out of that. Did you have to kind of break out of that and say, right, if I want to review books, I can't just keep reading things that I don't like?
I think I'm kind of in that phase that you have gotten to where you're able to. I'm very similar to you. If I start a book, my brain tells me that I need to finish it for multiple reasons, because it could literally be a plethora of reasons. If it starts off poorly, I'm like, it can't be this bad and get published. It has to get better. So I read it. If it's amazing in the beginning and starts to tail off for the remaining however many pages, I'm like, it had such a hot start. Like, it's got to come back to that, right?
Yeah.
So there's always that hope. But I think since I do a decent amount of audiobooking in the car, I've been able to kind of draw that line with audiobooks that aren't working with me. It's hard to sometimes make the distinction if it's the story itself or sometimes the narrator that aren't clicking with me with audiobooks. But I think the biggest cure to that has honestly been, and this has been happening since before I was actually a content creator on BookTube. BookTube has helped me curate my reading so that I hardly ever strike out anymore. Oftentimes what will happen is that a book just isn't for me, but it's still usually very well written. The bones are there. It's just not my cup of tea or coffee. So I'm able to kind of grow and understand my reading style as I continue to read more. So if I hear the premise in a non-spoiler review or somebody's wrap-up or whatever, I sometimes will just be like, I don't think that will be for me, so I'm not even gonna enter it, with the risk that it might not be for me, and then I feel like 150 pages into it, I'm not going to want to finish it. Because luckily with Mike's book, it was a thriller, and typically thrillers are 200, 300, maybe 400 pages. But fantasy books are usually a lot longer than that. So it's a big ask. Even I'm a massive Stephen King fan. Many of his books are a tall ask to just try. So I think BookTube has helped me curate my TBR and my decisions to read books in the sense that I will probably like the book, or at least be able to admire its merit and see why other people might like the book. So that has been great, but it has also removed from me the kind of fun of wandering into a bookstore with zero plans, checking out covers, reading the first couple, pages in a chapter, going in blind. Like, I always have some kind of motive going into a bookstore or a Goodwill looking for like used books. I'm like looking for titles that I recognize or hear people talk about. Like, it's never just blindly book shopping anymore. So the magic of that has kind of been removed from my life to an extent, but I hardly ever strike out. So
And at least now you get to kind of share that with people. And reading some of the comments on your videos, people really seem to appreciate and say, hey, I'm going to check that out. So that's kind of nice as well. You brought up narrators. Now, and this is also follows in with part of what we're talking about story. Have you ever read the Power by Naomi Alderman? And I think it's a Netflix thing now. You ever read
No.
that? Okay. I listened to that book a while ago, and the narrator was fantastic. And my wife popped in something in the car the other day, and the narrator was horrible. It's like, just turn that off. I don't care what the story is. I cannot listen to this person for hours. But the narrator on The Power was great. And about halfway through the book, I'm just taking a walk, and I'm wondering, do I like this book because I like the book, or do I like the book because of the narrator? And the further the book went on, I realized it was because of the narrator. I said I probably wouldn't like this book as much if I were reading it, right? And then I thought to myself, why isn't this a Netflix show? Which now it is. About 80% through the book, I realized why it wasn't a Netflix show at the time. It just seemed like the story kind of got lost, right? And it felt like the author didn't have a plan on how she was going to wrap it up. And then it became very obvious how it looked like they were going to wrap it up, and I won't spoil the ending for you. But it was almost disappointing the way it kind of played out. But the narrator kept me engaged with it. And, for indie authors, I think, especially, that's a really tough kind of nut to crack, because those great voices command pretty steep prices. And Mike knows that putting together an audiobook is not something you can jump into lightly. I mean, what's your sales, if you don't mind, Mike? How many of those audiobooks do you have to get rid of before you made your money back to the narrator?
So for the 3 books that I've had made audiobooks, I have to sell 1,000 copies roughly to break even, and I've sold about 200. It's been just over a year since the first one came out, though, so hopefully 5 years and I'm break even, and then after that it's just profit. But 5 years from now, are people going to be reading my books? Who knows?
Yeah,
It's
sure.
kind of it's a leap of faith. And when I started, the whole thing was never, I want to be Stephen King. It was, I think I'm reasonably okay with this. Let's see how far I can go. And that's where I'm at now. And I have no expectations of, Netflix films of my things. It'd be great. I won't say no, but, I don't know. So how about you, Colin? Do you ever see, is it the narrator? Is it the book? Do you wonder about these things?
I do wonder, and I think that it's like many things in life, much more nuanced than just yes or no, or this way or that way kind of answer. Because I think, from my experience, the bones of the story just kind of have to be there. Kind of like with your example, Ro, like the bones were there. You were invested in the beginning.
Yeah.
Maybe you realized it might not necessarily be for you, and you might not have enjoyed it as much had you just been physically reading it, but the story was engaging enough to entice you to want to keep going. And then I think there are specific experiences that I've had with audiobooks that have actually enhanced my reading experience tenfold in some cases. Like the example that I've been preaching for a while now is Project Hail Mary by Ray Porter, I believe is the narrator's name. I recommend, it's the only book I've ever recommended to people to do the audio over the physical. It is that much of a better experience, in my opinion. And my wife, who is not a reader, like of fiction, she reads like most people read, nonfiction and for school and whatnot, but she's not a large fiction reader. And I listened to Project Hail Mary, and I would not stop talking about it, the audiobook. So I got her to start listening to it with me. We were like doing yard work one day, and over the course of the next like 5 or 6 days, like we would just anytime we could find time to get away together, we would like hook our phone up to a Bluetooth speaker and like lay on the couch or, lay in bed at night and just listen to this till we fell asleep. Because I think there's something to be said about I think it's just human nature. When a good storyteller is good at their job and is able to do it in a way that truly connects with people, I think there's something to be said about that.
Yeah.
So there's a give and a take with it too, because reading is also a very personal experience, at least for me. And a lot of people don't click with audiobooks that well because they say that it's like somebody else deciding the inflection and deciding the way that this character is going to sound, their intonation in their voice. And like I've had narrators where I've started reading the book physically and picked up the audiobook and I'm like, this is not how I was reading it. I can't do this anymore. So there's layers. I think this is a it's like a big onion.
Yeah.
There's also a big series that have switched narrators midway through.
Oof.
That I'm like, no, why would you do that? Or maybe it's because somebody passed away, or I'm not sure what the reasons are,
right.
But there's people that I've grown to love hearing their voice. And I associate their voice with, like James Langston. I'm reading The Realm of the Outerlings right now. I associate his voice with those books.
Yeah, the Harry Potter series, which is getting I think a much needed kind of refresh here in the next few years. Really looking forward to that. But when the books first came out, I was in England when book 3 or 4 came out, and before the movies came out, my wife and I were talking about it, and we said, if they do not cast Alan Rickman as Snape when they make a movie about this, they have failed, right? So even before the movies, I read Snape in Alan Rickman's voice, and that will forever be the voice of Snape for me, almost regardless of who they get to play it, simply because it was beforehand, But kind of to your point, there's a series of cozy mysteries called the Cleopatra Fox Mysteries by C.J. Archer, which are excellent in themselves, but the person who narrates those audiobooks of hers is a woman named Marianne Hussey, Hussey. Fantastic. Really makes those books kind of come alive, does the voices and everything really well. And I kind of look forward to hearing that person speak the books almost as much as the story, right? So there's something very definite about that. There was a question. First of all, I had to jump up earlier, had to sneeze. Sorry about that. I know this is live. It's really weird, but you do not want to see me sneeze. Nobody wants that.
So, Colin, I'll add that because of BookTubers, 2 series that I started, and I just audio only, is 1, Fred the Vampire.
Okay.
And 2, I got sucked in with Nico and Andrew Wizard with the Dungeon Crawler Carl.
That's what I want to try.
That is lit RPG, and that is so far away from anything I would ever want to do, but the narrator makes it, and both of them will tell you, don't get the physical book, get the audio. And I have the latest one, the 6th one, I guess, is I bought it. I haven't started listening to it, and it's like 20 some odd hours, which is a very, very long book for Mike. I don't like to go over like 400 pages or like 12 hours. So but looking so forward to reading this or listening to it. It's just ridiculous over and over. I mean, ridiculous is funny to me. So I love the series, but I would never
I've heard great things about that series. I need to check that one out.
Yeah, but get the audio because I don't know the guy who does it, but oh my God, yes.
Mike, if you don't mind me, sorry, just asking a quick question. I've kind of wondered, what is the process of sourcing a narrator for somebody like you? That obviously your options are maybe a little bit more limited than somebody that's traditionally published and may have more options. How do you find somebody? How do you even begin that process? Does Amazon just have them? Like, here's a pile of narrators you can pick from.
So,
oh, really?
So I was at an author's convention, and I was talking to an author who had his book on audio, and I was asking the same. I was like, "How do you even do this? Oh my God, you have gone to the mountaintop." He's like, "No, I'm just a schmuck." But he said, "You go to Audible ACX, I think is the website, where you say, 'I have a book I want to be read,' and you upload a 3-minute sample, like 1,500 words, something like that, and then you can put, 'I want to do an audition.'" So, and this never gets old. I did a casting call for voice actors.
Wow.
I mean, never in a million years would I have thought this was possible. And what the guy had told me, he said he got like 30 that he listened to. He goes, and I was listening to a guy, goes, and I just got chills because that was my main character speaking. He goes, that is what I was hearing in my head. And when the actor did, he goes, "That's the man." He goes, "Now I just have to, hopefully afford him." And so I did that. I didn't get nearly as many, but then I also requested a West Country dialect of English. So I got 2 people who could actually do it. And some people like, "Well, I'm American, but I'd like to read for you." I'm like, "Okay, I'm not going to pick you, but whatever."
What was the name of your narrator is eluding me at the time, but
James
I thought
Munier.
he was fantastic. I really enjoyed listening to him.
Yeah, when I was texting him, I was like, "No, I want your native accent." He's from Bristol. He's like, "Not a London accent, or God forbid an American." I'm like, "No, do you?" And he's like, "Wow." So
Really
yeah,
cool.
but when I heard him, I mean, one, he's an actor. He's been in like 36 plays and 5 TV series in England. He's in Masters of the Air, that's coming out next in August or January on Apple TV. So, as I like to say, now that Steve and Tom are done with him, he works for me. But yeah, when I heard his voice, I mean, just the way he projected, I was like, "Oh my God, yes." I'm like, "But this guy's a professional actor. There's no way on earth that I can afford him." And so, you have to put in what you're willing to pay, and then they put what they're willing to work for. And I was like, "So if you look at these, there is one point of intersection, my highest possible and your lowest possible. So let's do it." And he said yes. So yeah,
Cool.
but yeah, thrilled with him. I mean, can't imagine anyone else doing it at this point. So he better not hit it big, because I don't know if I could afford him if he does.
So, Colin, you're coming up here on a year doing this in January, right?
Yes.
What can we expect from Colin's Corner in 24?
Well, that's a good question. It's kind of, I think, similarly to Mike's experience with Spiffbo, is that I think it's important to do this. I went into this with not really any expectations. Like, sure, I promote myself on personal Facebook pages, my Twitter account, social media and whatnot, but it's not to make it big. If I wanted to make it big, I wouldn't have started a channel on YouTube to talk about books in this century. But I went into this without any expectations, and I think that has helped me to not it's helped me to stay motivated, because nothing is really like letting me down. It just is what it is. If more people interact and more people choose to subscribe and more people come back and interact with me on YouTube and other social media platforms, that's awesome, because that is really why I started the channel. I was interacting with people, like I mentioned in the beginning, in their comment sections and in Discords, and the whole time I was like, I feel like I could do this. I feel like I could just not build my own community, but that, and just become a I don't know, shift my role a little bit in the community, and be somebody that can talk about books. And because I think it's really important to, I don't know, for the 15 years between, like, I would say maybe like 7th, 8th grade until I became, I think I was 24 maybe, when I started reading again with 11/22/63. That was the book that brought me back, and that's why I brought it to our Book in a Beverage chat. I forgot an entire form of medium that was wonderful at delivering me entertainment and teaching me about the world around me in reading. Reading, I don't care if you read manga, I don't care if you read uh, thrillers, I don't care if you read fantasy, I don't care if you read whatever. I think as adults, we sometimes people lose that. I realized when I started reading fiction again that I wasn't using my imagination for so many years of my life in a fun way. And it brought such a fun feeling back into my life that I wanted to start to try to share that with other people. And so I feel like you guys can resonate with that a little bit as storytellers. And it's I've had family members and cousins be like, "Hey, I picked up a book that you were talking about," and like that alone makes editing videos and talking about books, that makes it worth it, because that's how I got back into it. Like, I just picked up a book and I was like, "Wow, this is amazing!" Like, I don't expect everybody to want to read like 3 or 4 books a month and start a YouTube channel and dive all the way in, but I feel like if people just pick up a few fiction books a year, I mean, I've learned so much about the world around me and the people that inhabit it from a safe space, all through books. And I think that there's something to be said about that, especially for children.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. From the writing standpoint, I've gotten some feedback. A friend of mine who doesn't read a lot, he sent me a message once and said, "Yeah, this made me cry," right? Which wasn't my intention at all, but wow, I felt great about that. It's like, yay, it elicited a response from people, so that's pretty awesome. Yeah. Mike?
So I have a question for you, Colin, based on Rose's comments there. Have you ever got mad at an author for killing someone?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Have you thrown the book, or have you got that mad that you threw it away from you? Or
I have had to, because I've said, I've shared it on my channel before. I'm a big softie. Like, I'm the emotional teddy bear in our relationship. And I love when a book is able to make me cry. Because you don't just get that in everyday life. Movies sometimes shows can almost get me there, not very often. That's the personal aspect of a book that I feel like is very hard to put into words. I also love being mad at characters. Love it. I absolutely love, because it's such a visceral emotional reaction that I feel like just going through day-to-day life, I don't get to feel that angry ever. Really.
Right.
And be able to like express it in some way that is safe and won't land me, somewhere where I'm not supposed to be. Also, people just aren't as evil as people in books are normally. So I think that, the emotional reaction that a book is able to. I was driving around. I'm listening to and reading Fool's Fate, which is the 3rd book in the Tawny Man trilogy of Realm of the Elderlings. So it's kind of the middle trilogy, but it was originally supposed to be the end, I believe. And so I was ready for some. And if you guys know Robin Hobb at all, she likes to hurt people's feelings. So I was ready. I was going into this ready. I was knowing that I was going to be hurting at some point. And I've got about like 40 pages left in it right now. And I was driving around last night at work, just crying, delivering pizzas to people, like in my car.
That's got to be an odd experience for someone answering the door to get their pie, and you're sitting there all sobbing.
I'm wiping my eyes, and I'm going up there with this like chippy, real happy attitude. I did, yeah. It is great for tips.
Yeah, well,
I wipe my tears with the receipts, and I make it obvious that I was crying. And they're like, "Oh, are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm great. Yeah, I'm great."
That'd be better than
but no, it's just I love that emotional reaction, whatever it is. And if an author is able to do that, I think there's a talent in that. Because it enables me to feel connected to a book, right? The characters, the story, whatever it may be. And that's not easy. to do. I don't know how to do it, but I love to read about it, and I would love to maybe study how it's done, because it's very difficult. And people like Mike and yourself and other people that are able to write stories that people can connect to, that's got to feel so good when somebody reaches out to you and says they connected with this character, or they hated this character, or they cried over this moment, or whatever. Like this, is that awesome when people reach out to you and say that?
It
Oh, yes.
absolutely is, and it doesn't happen nearly enough. Mike, I don't know, tell me. I don't know that it's necessarily done on purpose, right? I mean, I think you're sitting there writing your story, and you kind of sit there and go, yeah, this person's going to have to come to an end, either because of they some kind of realist point, right? It's like they've just been around too long, right? They wouldn't live this long, or this needs to make the thing progress, or just dumb luck. I had a character in a book who I write without a plan. So I had a character I had no intention of killing off, and I was just using him to advance the plot from one point to the next. So the next thing I know, the dude is lying on the floor dead. And I kind of went, oh, okay. And then I thought about it and said, no, that makes sense, right? This whole little thing kind of makes sense. So yeah, he's dead. I'm sorry. And it was the person I named after one of my best friends growing up, and I had to call him up and say, I'm sorry, man, your character, doesn't make it through this book. My bad. Sorry.
So I'll tell you one. I had friends. I fairly often I put people I know in the books that say they want to be a character. So I generally tell them, you're going to be around for a chapter or two, and you're going to die. Because the first time when I did this, and I wrote something, and the guy who was in the story goes, "Oh no, I'd never do that. Change this whole story." And I was like, "No, we're not having this conversation." But when I tell people, I'm like, okay, do you want to be a good guy or a bad guy? They're almost, 70, 80% of people are like, oh, I want to be a bad guy. Make me be a bad guy. And I'm like, will do. There's one guy I put in there who's actually my brother's friend. And I'm like, well, I don't know if you want to tell him or not, but he doesn't actually die in this book because his character will be very useful for me later on. But now he's going to have an epic death instead. And he told the guy, he's like, oh my God, when is that book out? I'm like, 2 years from now. Relax. But he comes every Cincinnati Comic-Con, he comes and sees me and talks to me. And, how about my character? What's he doing now? He's so excited. He didn't buy my book this last time, but he was excited. So, yeah. But I was actually on an author's panel once, and the woman asked, goes, why do you... There we go. My brother. Shua is the character's name. She's like, why do you authors always kill our favorite characters? And they said, Mike, you want to take this one? It's like, thanks. I was like, well, think of it this way. You're in a room, you're trapped, you're trying to find a way out. The bad guys are trying to beat down the door. And there's no way you're all going to make it out without someone having to, slow them down. So who's going to slow them down? The sniveling guy who's under the table waiting to run away, or the hero who's out front saying, I'll protect everybody? So which one of those two is going to die? And, everybody likes the heroes. I'm like, this is why they die, because if I don't make it happen, then you'll be like, I'm just stretching credulity too much. So to me, it's like, okay, something, I don't see any way how there could not be casualties. So you're up. Maybe the third one won't die. We'll see. But yeah, to me, if you have to, on the panel I said it's more realistic. I'm like, now I'm using realistic for a fantasy. And the guy's like, honest, Mike. It's more honest. I'm like, there we go. That's the word. I should know words. I'm an author. But
hey,
yeah.
Colin, we have successfully ruined an hour of the middle of your afternoon. So thank you very much for, putting up with this nonsense for an hour and helping us through our first ever kind of live thing. I hope we get to do it again. And
This has been a blast.
Yeah, I hope you're...
I told Mike I don't really have any time limitations necessarily, so I'm just kind of hanging out. I'm going to go finish some homework later and maybe
we're keeping you from homework. We can't do that. Just tell you.
Yeah,
tell your
this has been
professor,
awesome to get
sorry,
to.
I
I
had
mean,
to-
no, you're okay. I've had the pleasure of interacting with Mike and over the course of the past. How long has it been now? Like 6? Has it been 6 months?
Probably 6 months. Yeah,
Close
Three
to, at
Rivers
least.
was early June, and that's when we saw
Yeah.
each other in person. So yeah, it's before then. Yeah, probably 6
So
months.
it's been awesome getting to talk to Mike and seeing you guys, start you found your little niche of interviewing people at these cons, and I think that's a really cool idea. Has that been fun?
You know, we were at a con. I think it was in Norfolk or something, and it was one of these multi-day things. And we had a lot of kind of dead time in the couple of hours. You get there a couple hours before the doors open, and we're just hanging around doing nothing. And we said, we should use this time. There should be something we can do to use this time that would be useful, right? And we thought, let's go interview creators, and not just authors, but creatives across different things, right? So you create content, you're a creator in our kind of space. So mostly it's authors that we talk to, but not always. Some artists and other folks creep in there. We talk to the 501st Legion, the guys that do Star Wars stuff, who are just neck deep in that. So yeah, it's kind of fun. It helps us get through the weekend for long cons, and gives us a little. Honestly, at the end of the day, it might give us an outlet to hold up our book in front of a camera or something as well. And
Yeah.
nobody's asked me my book yet, and I have 3 choices here. But I want to pick the one that is the most self-serving, and that's this,
Oh,
which is a fantastically well written and edited book, I might add.
yes, I owe it all to my editor.
That's right.
And Ro didn't make me say that.
No, that was an unpaid thing. No, but this is one. It's a historical fiction.
Bernard
And if you-
Cornwell.
Yeah, Sharpe's Regiment, and there's a TV series made of it back in the 80s, early 90s. And if you know who Sean Bean is, the British
Yes.
actor Sean Bean, he plays the titular Sharp. So it's actually a series Sean Bean lives through if you
No.
need that for a trivia night.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ben over at Books with Bengus Khan, but
Yep.
he loves Bernard Cornwell. He's been
He's fantastic.
tooting that horn for a little while, and it's
Yeah.
really kind of I'm excited to try him at some point.
Yeah, they're good reads, and there's a bunch of them too, which is nice. But the Sharp series is easily his best.
Cool.
All right, you got anything else, Mike?
Yeah, just real quick before we go, Colin, I will be up in your neighborhood next year. I'm not going back to Three Rivers, but I'll be in Altoona. I don't know if that's closer or not to you.
It's about the same distance as Three Rivers was. So yeah,
It is the Sci-Fi Valley Con. I'm going to try that one because Three Rivers didn't have enough people to make it worth my while to go back. So I'm going to try Altoona, which is actually closer for me. So I'm more
Cool.
excited about this.
I will keep that in mind for sure. I'd love to go to another con. I haven't made it back to one since the Three Rivers, but I had a blast there. That was a really cool experience. I kind of just went there by myself. Like, you were the reason I ended up going there, actually, because Mike was going to send me his books, and he's like, you know what? Are you going to be at the Three Rivers Comic Con? And I was like, you know what? I hadn't planned on it, but now I'll go. So that's kind of how that happened.
So what did your wife say when you said you were going to go to a Comic-Con?
She does. She is wonderful. She doesn't care if I read for hours. She doesn't care if I play video games. I have friends that I play video games with, and I tell them all the time, she's like, she doesn't care. They're like, there's no way she doesn't care. So I asked her last week, I was like, do you really not care if I just play video games for a few hours? And she's like, no, why would I care?
Oh man, yeah,
So,
you should have married her ages ago.
She doesn't care. Yeah, I got to marry her twice.
Well done.
So I'll definitely keep that in mind, Mike.
Cool.
All right, Colin, last chance.
I just want to thank you guys both for having me on to your first ever live interview.
First ever.
Yeah.
Right? This has been a blast. If you guys want suggestions, need recommendations of people to get on here, I've got them because this was a lot of fun. It was great to get to know you guys. This is kind of my favorite sector of BookTube is the live discussions, the live interviews, because it allows me to feel like I'm getting to know the creator. There's a different Colin that's recording. There's a different mic and row
Yep.
when you're recording a video. And I think there kind of has to be in a way. But this is my favorite experience to try to like get to know authors better as humans and not just a name on a book cover, and to get to know content creators and just kind of learn about their experiences and their journeys with reading and storytelling. So I want to thank you guys definitely for inviting me to be on here. I'm honored.
All right, thanks.
We'll
And
have
if
to have you back.
anybody's watching this and has actually made it all the way through 67 minutes, first, thanks. And if you know of anybody who Mike and I should talk to, please, drop us a message and let us know who we should be getting in contact with. We'll be happy to do that. Mike, take us out.
Okay, well, thanks everybody, and you'll see us again soon.
See you guys.